Well, look, welcome, William, and great to see you again, Craig. I love the shirt, love the swag, and I'm actually wearing a white shirt, but it's not front mate, so appreciate you wearing the
Yeah.
colors.
Yeah.
Um, and love the background there, William. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Integritek? And I love the Scale Pad Partner of the Year and what that's all about as well.
Yeah, so I'm the director of technical operations at Integritek. We're a managed service provider, headquartered out of Austin. We've got offices. I originally came from, through acquisition, through an MSP out of Los Angeles. Although I've been remote. I'm up in the Pacific Northwest. I've been remote for a decade now, and so we're part of the originally part of the Evergreen family through acquisition, and then now through kind of the creation of the Lyra Tech Group, part of that family of MSPs.
We know them.
We do.
Yeah.
No bunch of
and
them.
and I recall that you said your house is out in Gig Harbor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, rural Washington.
It's funny you call it rural Washington. It really isn't that far from Seattle. I know it's a little bit of a drive, but it's not terrible.
Past it's like
past over the bridge. Not too far.
The better way is to take the ferry. The power move is you take the ferry over because it's just such a nice, hop on a boat, take the nice, go across the sound. It's gorgeous.
What do they charge nowadays to take your car on a ferry back and forth?
I never take the car. It's usually if I'm going downtown. Like I had a meeting at Amazon a little while ago for AWS. So I just took. There's like a passenger ferry that's actually really close to me.
Yeah.
And then you just walk up. So it's awesome if you can swing it. I gotta say,
very nice. And I mentioned this, but my sister-in-law Nicole's family has a house there in Gig Harbor, so. I might give you a holler next time we're out there. Yeah, be awesome. Cool. So tell me about the Scale Pad Pack Partner of the Year. What is that about?
Yeah, so we are we've been a Scale Pad partner for actually we were pre-Scale Pad. We were a warranty master partner back in the day, and now it's Lifecycle Manager as part of the Scale Pad portfolio. We participate in the PAC as their partner advisory council. So we just, we meet with them occasionally, meet with other partners, talk about the product, talk about, things that work for us, what we think the direction, could be. They kind of bounce ideas off of us. So it's just a really good, I highly encourage people to participate in any kind of like peer group that they can.
Yeah.
I'm tremendously fortunate now that like our Lyra family of companies functions as a peer group. But there's so many great opportunities to like interface with your peers. Like when you're starting in the MSP space, it's very much a, you in your shop working with your clients, but you can learn so much from others. Other people have probably encountered the challenges you have or have the questions you have, and, just avail yourself of that. I didn't do it, for a long time, but it's something, certainly in the past, few years, I'm doing it for a while.
Totally agree. And I've seen that work really successfully at ConnectWise's Evolve program. Mm-hmm. I know, Greg, you spent a lot of time around the Evolve folks as well. I think, I didn't spend a lot of time with Craig last year at Evolve. So, but there's a lot of positive things that come out of these peer groups for sure.
Yeah, and I find be the person to ask the questions. Like lots of times I've noticed, people get into it and nobody wants to admit that they're having problems and nobody wants to admit that they have questions and struggles, but everybody does. And we all know it.
Yeah.
So be the one to raise your hand and say, I don't have an answer for this.
Yeah.
And even if nobody else does, the conversation that comes out of it is immensely valuable.
Yeah. You'll find out is other people have that same challenge as well. Yeah. Cool. And I did note, William, that you recently won an award last year. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So there was this sounds very grandiose, and it was. So I'll lead into that. So it was the MSP Titans of the Industry Awards, and got the award for the Outstanding PAX 8 Partner of the Year. So it was an awards, kind of ceremony that was put on by MSP Success and the marketing, the Robin Robbins group. Those people who've been in the industry for a long time know, Robin is like the OG of MSP marketing. I think probably in it longer than anybody, I think.
Wow.
And so they put together this really cool. I mean, I get to go to a lot of events, where I usually run into Craig and you at different events. But this was nuts. It was like black tie in Beverly Hills at the Hilton.
Wow.
Like in the same room where they do the Golden Globes.
Like no way.
We were in. Jay Leno did comedy. Magic Johnson, did an inspirational talk. Actually, just got my photos with them. Just downloaded. It was cool. It was unlike anything that we normally do, and we get an opportunity to do a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of great events, but this was like next level. Like I've never seen anything like it.
That's really impressive, and I see it on your background. The Titans. It's probably in small print there. What is it? Titans of?
It's MSP Titans of the Industry. So they did for people who participate in the marketing toolkit, the Robin Robbins program. They had a bunch of categories around, regions or industries and stuff. And then there were, partner companies. So like Dell, Threat Locker, sorry. Who else was there? There was a handful of other ones. And so Pax8 was one of the participants. And so,
cool.
So we've been a Pax8 partner for probably since almost they started.
Amazing. Well, we like your partners, Pax8, ScalePad. We've got some close relationships there as well. So, and Craig, we'll do a quick check-in with you. You're back stateside.
Yeah, for one more day.
and then you're off to the Pacific. Is that right?
I'm headed to Brisbane, Australia. There's the Evolve peer groups happening there. There's also another peer group there called TSP Mentor that's led by Dan Williams, a former MSP leader. The peer groups are super powerful. I'll echo what William said. Like when I started getting in the community, the most common thing I heard was I felt like I was all alone in my office. And then when I came together, I realized other people have the same problem. And I would admit my faults and we would work together to solve these challenges. And I'm heading down there to do that, get the word out, what's going on in the industry. And it's going to be a good time.
And you have an assignment, if you remember from last time, which is, we want to talk to, just like we have William here from the United States, we want to talk to, an MSP based in Australia. We want to talk to one out of Maryland. Was it you were last? Is that right? Yeah.
Where was
it Scotland or Ireland?
I was in Scotland, which they keep reminding me it's the UK. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So that's why I was like, wait, I was? Yes. And then I went to Dublin, which ended up being a pretty wild trip. I didn't know there was a such thing as a winter hurricane. And the day I was supposed to leave, it hit there 120 mile an hour winds, and airport closed. I'm like, what is happening?
So look, I think William clearly topped the class here, being a titan of the industry. Yeah. But I also want to say that, the US, especially when you look at peer groups like Evolve, and there are others like True Profit, we've got some very mature practices among MSPs. And then the rest of the world, I think UK, you mentioned UK is kind of, they're growing, right? They're maturing. And you spent a lot of time in Australia, Craig, and I think that's an interesting market. Can you make any observations around sort of those different markets and how the MSPs are similar or different?
Yeah. It's almost like we rehearsed this because I have been saying things about Australia. Like I like to compare it to wine grapes, Australia, right? So, and New Zealand. So they say a vine that has been stressed really hard, has had hard conditions, will produce the best grape for wine, right?
Okay.
the MSPs in that market are the same way, right? Like they've been stressed. They haven't had the infrastructure that North America has had. They haven't had public cloud for as long as North America has had. So they've had to work harder and do more things. So what you see coming out of that market, while the technology may have had a little bit of a lag there, they're actually really innovative and adopting it well. So, I recently attended a conference where an Australian company was talking about some workflow automation they're doing in Azure for a client, leveraging some AI techniques. And it's like, I don't hear a lot of companies doing that in the US, and it's more than one. You see a lot of that there. So yeah, in Australia, New Zealand, while the tech has been a little behind, they have a great attitude. I call it the give it a go attitude. They're like, yeah, let's try it. Let's go. United States is kind of, we're vanilla. It's like, yeah, we got our things. Like, we're kind of in the middle of the US, the UK and Australia, New Zealand, like a little hesitant on things, but we'll move on stuff once we see, all right, you're doing it. Okay, you're doing it. All right, I'll do it.
Sure.
And then when you get in the UK, it's very relational there. The channel is still very well defined, especially as you get into Europe. Heavy relational. Like even when I was at ConnectWise, I swear the sales cycle was 4 times as long.
Yeah.
You just got to build a lot of trust in that market. Just an observation there. I love them all. I've been going there 15 years. They adopted managed services really early, so you see a lot of high recurring revenue in companies there. Managed services, because of all the regulation that happens in the EU, like the UK just gets some of that too, and GDPR and cybersecurity tends to be moving faster there because of those things. So, it's fun traveling around and seeing how different. I mean, even just in the United States, like the way an MSP operates in Tampa, vastly different than in Seattle. Like I say all the time, like I'll never forget the time I visited Chicago. And if I was south of I-90, the businesses were way different north of I-90, right?
Wow.
Slower internet connections, rural, the rates were different. And then north of I-90, now you're in the city, high-speed internet, data centers. It's just so crazy. Yeah.
And William, with Integritek, I assume their footprint is pretty big. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got we have offices in Austin and Dallas, and then Los Angeles, and then Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Oh, how about that? Throw in Eau Claire.
Yeah.
And I assume your clients are in those geographies, or are they?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, some of them will be remote. They'll usually have a footprint. I mean, that's usually how you get kind of involved with them if they're in kind of our geographic location. Some of them have moved over time. Obviously a lot are moved to more, hybrid or virtual, so that like where a company is getting a lot more nebulous nowadays.
Yeah.
Like some of them might not even have a physical office, or they've, we have clients go through, it's like they used to have a big office and then they had like a warehouse space. Well, you still need the warehouse space because if you have products, you need a place to put it, but they've gotten rid of that physical office because they just didn't need it anymore.
Interesting.
So that has evolved over time.
So switching topics a little bit, as we look, we're still early in 2025, and I know we're going to have a lot more gatherings of MSPs, whether it's peer groups or conferences. But when you're with your peers, William, and if you were to put your finger on the pulse of what are the big challenges that people are focused on as far as MSPs go in 2025? What are the top 3 that kind of come to mind that people are really focused on?
I mean, I think the 2 that kind of jump out are the ones that I think would be on the top of every single person who's paying attention's list, which is cybersecurity and AI, right? Those are the ones, and to just say those is relatively like a no-brainer, like
right.
Of course. Of course, we're all talking about it. We're all dealing with it. The challenge, I think, with those specifically is kind of like, how do you, like, we all have a book of business. We all have existing clients. Those clients have, we have existing contracts. We have all these things. So how we get from where we are today as a functional business to move into those spaces, to move into heavier into cybersecurity, which everybody needs to do. Like nobody disagrees, right? Nobody says, "Oh, my business will never involve AI." Like, oh, of course it will,
right?
Because it's of course, but how you use it, what you do, how you do it properly, how it makes sense, how you get good ROI, both for us as an MSP and for our clients. Like that's the challenging part, right? Like everybody agrees with kind of the conclusion. It's the intermediate steps that are really the challenge. And then for us, I think the third thing is really, client experience. How do we make our experience with our client? How do we make them interacting with us better, right? Whether it's us doing more to kind of stop problems before they happen. I always kind of said like proactive is a word we used to kick around. That was like the buzzword, in the MSP space. And people kind of did it. I mean, you automated some things and you did some stuff, but it really wasn't what it was sold. I'll just say that, But how do we make the client's experience better? So, calling us is not like calling the dentist, right? It's like, it's not just when you're having a bad day. It's when you want to plan to have a better day. Then I want them to think about us as that we can help them enable a better tomorrow rather than solving just a problem that they're having today. So part of that is how do we like up level our CSM experience, vCISO, like all that kind of stuff. How do we have that better relationship? How do we provide just a better experience? How do they contact us? How do they get tickets resolved? How do we interact with them? That I think is one that will differentiate, it'll make them feel good about dealing with us.
I think another thing that we've talked about is alignment to business objectives, right? So every one of your clients has their own business, and they probably see their managed service provider as managing the IT and taking care of that. But there are things that you can do that help them align to their business objectives, and really just having the conversation. Maybe you can riff on that. Kind of how do you do that? How do you align to business objectives of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, making sure that like the dumb nitpicky stuff is out of the way, right? Going over metrics. Well, there's a certain amount of like, yes, we're doing kind of what you pay us to do is important, but that shouldn't be the focus. The focus is really like, where do you want your business to go? How can we help you accomplish those goals? Because nobody's in their business to they didn't start a business to pay an MSP, right? Like we are somewhat of a necessary evil, right? Like we're like rent in some fashion. Like nobody wants to pay rent, but you need a place to put your business, so you pay rent, and hopefully you're happy with what you get from it. You're happy with it. Same thing with us. You should be happy with the services we provide. Happy that we enable your business to do what it needs to do, and ideally then help you grow your business, help you accomplish whatever those objectives happen to be, right? And every business has different objectives. It might just be, hey, we're happy with how we're doing. We just want to be more efficient. Great. What can we do to help you? Hey, we want to expand. We want to go into this new market. Cool. Let's talk about how we can enable, better hybrid workflow. Or we want to have our staff, for our clients, they want to have their staff be happier working for the company. Well, how can we make their lives better? Right. So it really depends on what is their objective. And the only way you find that out is by talking to them. It's like just doing tickets isn't that, it's having that conversation.
I think, Craig, you bring a pretty interesting perspective because, your job is to acquire, MSPs like Williams and bring them into the fold. And I think what that really means is the folks that you're going to talk to tend to be high performers. People who have figured out how to scale their business, figured out how to scale their profits. What are your takeaways when you look at the different MSPs of these high performers, right? What is it they're doing better than, say, the guys you're going to pass on because they're not quite at that level?
Yeah, you see very clear defined roles in the organization, and it does tie to customer experience because when you look at like a typical MSP, the founder's kind of doing everything, right? The founder's finding new business, doing account management, trying to financially manage the business, maybe has a part-time finance person. But when you get into these more mature, the maturity comes from having defined roles in the company. Okay, your role is the customer success / account management function, right? Making sure the customer is getting the most out of what they're paying for from us, right? Mm-hmm. And then your role is to go find new business for us. And your role is, and when you see it, you do see that they have a different conversation with the customer. Like William's saying, it's more of a focus on outcomes. It's, okay, what is technology enabling you to do in your company? If you're talking to a construction company, right? I use this example all the time because I think we all understand it, right? It's, all right, you're a construction company. We're going to give you technology so that you can better manage your general contractors and timelines so that you get buildings done on time and are profitable, and aligning the technology to that company's goal, having that conversation, and less of the, like, exactly what you're saying. Hey, we did these tickets and look, we scanned and we found all these threats and we did this. They're not going to understand what that means, right? It's the MSPs that are killing it right now are translating that into the customer's language and driving value. That's hard, right? Because a lot of people are great at selling things. Hey, I've got this thing. It's got no buttons on it. You're going to be able to do all this stuff. It's this fast. It has this much processor. Like, oh, okay, yeah. But selling an outcome is tough. But the best of the best are out there doing it.
Very good. Any other thoughts, William, on that topic?
Yeah, I think it's really important to kind of like translate kind of what we do into what means something to the client. So like when we talk about, cybersecurity obviously being one, we talk about like, oh, we're patching vulnerabilities, or we're doing, really what we're talking about is risk, right? Like risk to their business. That's what they care about. They don't care about patches. They don't care about scans. And, the only thing that those are there for is to enable us to reduce risk.
Yeah.
And risk is something they understand. They're like, I have this thing. I have my business that I care about.
In making that translation, I love the analogy here. The reason why you need to understand the attack surface, the vulnerabilities that you have, is because it introduces revenue risk.
Yep.
That's language a CEO understands. Like, what do you mean my revenue is at risk? Well, what happens if you're offline, right? How much revenue is at risk for your business if you're offline, right? And that's something. Another related point is most businesses understand when they're in a contract or trying to get into a contract with another firm they're selling to, they typically have to present their insurance policy, typically general liability, right? Well, now many of the larger organizations that companies sell to will also ask for their cyber insurance policy. And I think as a managed service provider, it's incumbent on managed service providers to ask for the cyber insurance policy as well for their clients, because if nothing else, if they don't have one, it's time to get on board so that you don't face that downstream liability. And those are all business conversations.
Yeah, I mean, we believe, everybody, just like general liability, cyber insurance is going to be, kind of just table stakes for doing business.
Yeah.
It's not quite there yet, especially in like the small business sector.
Right.
It's an additional cost and something that, there's a certain amount that we have to kind of educate, but it's a challenging conversation because like we aren't really in the best position to kind of like say, hey, you need to go spend this money on insurance. Like they have to kind of internalize that and kind of understand what it means. Now we have to be there to support it. And, there is a certain amount that we kind of do educate them. We ask about it, but if they don't have it, it's not really like, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for us to kind of like say, hey, because very often that cyber insurance from our perspective is going to drive additional services. It might drive professional service engagement, might drive all these things. So I don't want to put us in a place where we're like, hey, go spend money on this thing. By the way, to get it, you have to come back to me and spend a bunch more money.
Yeah.
Like, that's a weird conversation to have, and not really like, but we can talk about like, hey, this is to protect your business. We recommend you talk to your insurance broker. You really look at this, figure out if that makes sense for you and your business, because it's you protecting your business. And if you want to do it, we're here to support you.
Right.
Right. Well, and we just let them know, like, hey, there's probably going to be some things that the insurance carrier is going to require of you. You're going to get a questionnaire that's getting longer and longer every year.
Yeah.
And we'll help you answer it and figure out what we need to do to meet those requirements. But we just have an honest conversation with them. Like, hey, if you want to get cyber insurance, odds are you're going to have to make some changes.
You guys have brought up some good points. And Anoop, like, I love the way you're talking about that. Your revenue's at risk, because it feels like the AI headlines have taken over, right? And it's not that, I mean, cybersecurity is not done, right? The job's never done. But I think people have such a hard time selling it that they're running to the AI, because that's easy. That's an easier sell. It's, look at this cool thing. See, it's going to do this. It's going to do that. And then the customer is thinking more of the revenue generation coming, right? Or the margin they're going to gain.
Right.
And they're not thinking about, that's nothing compared to the amount of revenue that's at risk. Like, you're looking at this all wrong. Like, while AI could help you scale and it's going to make you X amount of money over the next year or two, we haven't finished the cyber work, and it's hard, like MSPs, like, William, I don't know if you agree, but I hear all the time, it's so hard to sell my customer on cyber, advanced cyber, because they're like, what, another 15,000 a year? I could buy X and generate X revenue off that. And what are you doing? It's such a weird time in our industry with this stuff.
And one of the challenges that goes along with that is that, what we're really selling is better outcomes, right? Like, we're not like reduced risk, but there's no guarantees. Like, anybody says, like, oh, if you buy this, nothing will ever happen to you, right? Like, that's just not
right.
You're saying that, you're lying, and you should stop. But like, it's really, hey, we want to make it so the frequency of you having a problem is low.
Yeah.
And if something happens, you're in a much better position. Right? It's kind of like, seatbelt doesn't stop you from getting into a car. But it's good to have on if you're
Speaking of those metaphors, and I mentioned hurricanes earlier, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't think I'm getting hurricane insurance next year. Like, I'm willing to take that risk. Take the house. I'll just move. Like, this insurance is crazy. How expensive it's getting. It's like, and then when I think about those things, I just think about the end customer and how hard this is to pull off with them.
Right. Well, so on the topic of cybersecurity, what are you concerned about today and through the rest of this year? What are the attacks that you guys are seeing, William, that you're advising your clients, hey, we need to keep an eye on this? We're seeing a lot of attacks through this vector.
I mean, I think the number one thing right now is Office 365 or Microsoft 365 and your Entra ID.
Yep.
That is the keys to the kingdom, right? Like, we have so many different services that use SSO. So that single login, will get you into Salesforce. We'll get you into every different system. You've got all your, HR data in Bamboo HR, but it SSO'd into Entra. So that identity is the thing. Because it's essentially like a perfect mask that could walk you into any office, right? Like, if you think of before, if you wanted to break into a building.
And to be clear, though, the risk you're really talking about is stealing of that authentication to Entra ID, right?
Well, it's impersonation, right? So, like, impersonating somebody. When we talk about business email compromise or people getting phishing emails and sending money out. Well, if it comes from somebody within your company, well, that's like when we talk about how to watch out for phishing emails, that's not a phishing email. That's Bob in accounting asking you to transfer money. He works there, right? Like, so if you get credentials, so it's the range of things that can open up, even if they just sit there and just watch. And there's a lot of that where, accounts get compromised and nothing gets exposed for quite some time. And the amount of data that can exfiltrate, the amount of business information that could either get them access to like money or just raw, corporate data. It's very difficult to like ransomware, a lot of cloud services because they have good backups and you can roll them back and stuff like that. But really it's the data that matters.
To rephrase your words, right now for most small businesses, the kingdom is their Microsoft 365 instance because it also has all their SharePoint documents, all their emails, all the sharing collab, and the keys are those identities that have access, right? So protecting that and monitoring that is super important.
William, I have a question. So it seemed like 10 years ago, if you brought up cybersecurity to someone, they saw it as a barrier to getting work done. Oh, great. A longer password. Oh, great. Now like 5 ways to log in. Oh, great. Now I got to take security awareness training constantly. Like, do you think customers are starting to understand the importance of that and don't see it as a hindrance so much anymore?
I think they do, but I think we also have to be responsible at how things are implemented, right? Because like real security is always at the cost of convenience. It just is.
Yeah.
Like you're always going to have a little bit of that. I mean, when we talked, 10 plus years ago, when we talked about security, what we talked about was taking out your Netgear router and putting in a Sonic wall, right? Like that you're secure now, right? Like we've protected the edge, right?
Yeah.
We've built a fence around your office.
But remember when you would turn on, like you have to reset your password every 45 days. Oh, what?
Yes. Yeah. Now it's like, no, we need to get rid of passwords altogether. Like multi-factor, even multi-factor is now not even enough. We're talking pass keys. We're talking, additional biometric stuff like that. It shouldn't be, but it's also like good policies on the back end. So you're going into 365 and you're setting up proper, like, should anybody be able to sign in from any device?
Yeah.
No. Do we have monitoring for things like impossible travel? Like, do we block logins entirely from certain countries? Like, if your whole team is in, Des Moines, well, yes, we should block every other country. Like, there should be no reason. Like, that should just be standard.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff protects, enable MFA, set up good conditional access policies. You're like, if everybody just did that as the baseline, right? Yeah. I think that baseline, the table stakes is going up. It doesn't mean it's that hard. It's not wildly complicated. It doesn't stop people from doing the work, but we just have to do it. And that eliminates a huge amount of the problem. Now we make it work for it.
I think that's great wisdom. So let's just move to something on a funner note than compromise with the keys to the kingdom. Craig, what are you going to do for fun in Australia? I know you're going to do something for fun.
Oh yeah. So the I'm kind of like a pseudo farmer. I don't even know if I'd say farmer. I just have a lot of farm machinery. Because I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I'm not, if I can get a tractor to do something for me, I'm getting the tractor. I'll take the trash out. I'll lay it on the bucket of the tractor and drop it to the street. So I was talking to an MSP there, and I love these guys. And I said, hey, man, let's do something fun. The guy's like, I got a lot of land here, and I just bought a brand new excavator. I'm like, wait, what?
Whoa.
And,
you're going to dig some holes.
Yeah. So I think, here's what I envision. A couple beers, get the excavator out. Then, hey, let's tie a rope to that bucket. I'll hold the rope, start spinning, see how, and see what happens. You see those videos. But, I always like to keep it fun. I say all the time, like, people don't remember steak dinners. It's just another steak dinner.
Yeah.
But they'll remember is if we get an excavator out. They'll remember if I'm like, hey, let's fly out to the Barrier Reef. YOLO, let's go,
Yeah.
One thing I learned from my mentor, Arnie Bellini, which was have the courage to be yourself. If you get an idea, just do it. Do it. If people think you're crazy, oh well. That's not your problem. So
hey, it's the experience.
I tend to come up with the ideas. So I'll keep you posted, but the excavator is where it starts.
All